Hello and welcome to another recording of the SEO Huddle. My name is Dan Taylor, and for the first time since I think the first episode, we have the original cast of reprobates, bandits, and criminals. Today we have Jerry White, reprobate, Cindy Crum, and Jono Alderson joining us. Today we're going to be covering 2 or 3 topics, most of which is Jono's amazing jazz hand coordination, which we just witnessed.
Yeah.
But we're going to kick things off with something which is quite timely and has been on the lips of a lot of SEO Twitter, SEO LinkedIn, and the SEO Slack groups. And that is PubCon, which Cindy has just got back from. She's got her nice Nevada tan. Cindy, how's Vegas? How's PubCon?
It was, Vegas. I'm not a big fan of Vegas in general, or the Strip especially, but I do like PubCon. And I was a last minute addition on the agenda after Brett saw the video about Chrome that kind of went a little viral. It's got more than 9,000 views now. But he was like, oh, we need that as a keynote. So they added a lunch keynote and I flew out and did 2 days of Vegas, or 2 evenings of Vegas, I suppose. It was a smaller conference this time, but there were still some really, top-notch speakers. And, Vegas has its moments. It's fun, other than ending up smelling like a casino every night. So, yeah.
The 2 things. So, one, if you want a breakdown of Cindy's Chrome video, we also covered it on the last episode, relatively in depth. And just out of curiosity, what does a casino smell like?
Oh, sadness.
Yeah. And sadness and cigarette smoke. They're still letting people smoke inside in some of the casinos, but they have really great ventilation systems, but they're not perfect. And then, of course, now more people are vaping as well, so it smells a little bit sweeter than just regular cigarettes.
Oh, sickly, horrible.
Yeah.
All this is taking me back to is kind of a late 2000s university nightclub.
Like that.
I'm just trying to contextualize
sadness, desperation, and smoke. Spilled
beer. Yeah. Wow, that's capsulated.
Happy times.
But that's not to say bad things about PubCon, and that's only my personal opinion of Vegas, because I don't gamble. But PubCon itself was great, and it didn't smell like cigarette smoke.
I've been to Atlantic City. I can paint a vivid picture in my mind. Just that, but less rainy. I probably think.
I've been to Vegas with Jono, and I think we were trying to wander around the back streets at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to find somewhere for breakfast because we just
we had the most incredible breakfast in terms of quantity that I've ever seen. It must have been about 3:30 a.m. We definitely nearly got mugged. I definitely had my backpack open with my laptop hanging out. We weren't very awake. Yeah. Was he going to put a Denny's or something, and there was more food than I've ever seen within like a square kilometer? It was insane.
Denny's does that. They're good at that.
If you order the lumberjack breakfast, you need to be a lumberjack to eat it, I think is the rule.
Yeah.
Hence the name. Yeah.
What was on the lumberjack? What made it a lumberjack breakfast?
Everything. The quantity was unfathomable. It was a forest of plates.
But not British. Nothing like a traditional English breakfast. Like no beans. It's everything meat. So like sausage, bacon, ham, and probably hash browns. This is my guess from
enormous amounts of pancakes and syrup and waffles as well. Yeah.
I did like on my honeymoon in Croatia that the morning breakfasts at the buffet thing, they were called British breakfast beans. So that was our contributions for European breakfast, I guess. No black pudding, which was upsetting, but that's quite divisive. Do you know what black pudding is, Cindy?
I've tasted it, and I've been told I don't want to know what's in it.
Yeah, don't Google it. Just accept that you've tried it, tick it off a list, and never Google it.
Also, white sausage, not a fan.
No, that's quite different. Yeah, there was more Scottish white sausage.
Oh, Scottish white sausage. Yeah, that one.
I know that's white pudding I'm thinking of. Yeah.
All bad.
Yeah. Talking about things we don't want to Google, we get too much into detail on. That probably segues us nicely into the next topic, which I feel we couldn't probably not talk about, and definitely couldn't not talk about given that Jono's here. WordPress, WPM.
Yay!
Yeah. For everyone
Don't be too
who
hard, you'll get
has,
sued.
for everyone who has been off planet in our industry, I'm going to say for the last sort of week, 10 days, do you want to try and give a rundown of what has happened?
God, I really don't, because there is so much of it, and it's so toxic, and it is so, for want of a better word, just crazy. But yeah, sure.
How did it start?
So, yeah, so well, it depends how far back you want to go, right? So let's zoom right out. Nice. We'll put some visual effects in there later. That's not just that. No, well, those were the visual effects that we put in later. That's what we'll claim. Yeah, great. Post-production. So WordPress runs 40-something% of the web, give or take. And over the last decade or so, there have been some interesting conversations around this music's lovely. How should this be managed? How should it be run? What is our process of governance? And there's been a few. So WordPress is ostensibly run by, it's open source, so it's run by the community, except there are bits of it that aren't run by the community. And WordPress, the open source software, coexists along WordPress.com, which is the managed hosting version, which is run by a company called Automattic, who employs most of the contributors who manage the core roadmap, which is all micromanaged by Matt Mullenweg, who is generally referred to as a benevolent dictator for life. He is the sole decision maker for what is WordPress, what is its roadmap, where's it's going. And the community ostensibly can influence him en masse and steer him a little bit, but really it is his product. And he was one of the co-founders. He fell out with the other co-founder years and years and years ago, and he is the sole owner of WordPress trademark, WordPress.org, the website, Automattic, the company, and he runs the WordPress Foundation, which is a non-profit board, which there are two other people on who very rarely get named because they're probably not real. And all of the kind of awkward, contentious things that happen in WordPress around that decision was weird, or this product roadmap thing is strange, or why is there not a marketing function, and why is it so odd, all trace back to Matt's individual personal weirdness. And he's a multi-millionaire. Like, there are more zeros on his bank account than I will ever see in my life. Many of us, all of us together, will see. And as a result, his experience of the world is slightly distorted, I think. And he has some interesting ideas about how WordPress should be run and shouldn't. So all of that, for years and years and years, there's been some really weird behaviors. He's upset and annoyed a lot of people through weird decision-making and what feels like a consistent tone deafness. But despite all this, WordPress remains phenomenally successful. So all of the evidence that he sees, sure.
How do you get that rich running something that's open source? Like, you make money and everyone contributes for free? That seems suspicious.
It's hugely suspicious. So WordPress.com sells WordPress hosting and premium services and consultancy and marketing, and has its own version of like AdSense and AdWords, makes huge amounts of money. And so some of the big hosting companies and conglomerates license the WordPress.org trademark in order to be able to sell WordPress hosting, quote unquote, which we'll come on to.
But it all happens mostly off the work of free labor.
Yeah, so the WordPress, the CMS, is largely most of the code that gets written, most of the functionality that ends up in your CMS is produced for free by volunteers.
So that's a good approach, I guess. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we all doing this?
Harnessing the goodwill of an army of free contributors. Yeah, if we can, we can pull that off. I mean, that solves a lot of economic challenges, right? Let's just have thousands of people doing our work for us. Maybe. So all of this is weird, and it's contentious, and a lot of people get their feelings hurt quite often, and contributors come and go, but generally things plod on. Now, the big thing that happened is WordCamp US, one of the big conferences. Matt was due to do the closing keynote. And instead of the talk that he might have given, he essentially came on stage and said that WP Engine, which is one of the other big hosting companies, are evil because they don't contribute enough of their revenue back to the project. So the other way that the WordPress economics work is, in theory, if you're a significant player in the space, you're meant to give back 5% of your resources, whether that's time or money or hours or value or whatever it is. There is a kind of semi-official promise that there's this exchange of value.
Tithing at church.
Absolutely. You see how weird this starts to look already. So WP Engine, I can't remember the name of their parent company, Silver Lake, private equity, huge amounts of money. And they are, so WP Engine is a hosting product for WordPress. They are more expensive than many. And they make an enormous amount of money because they scoop up a lot of the kind of not quite enterprise, large SME size clients. And they make millions and millions and millions of dollars off WordPress. And Matt's argument is some of that should be given back. And there's a whole bunch of weirdness around how this was pitched and presented. And Matt fumbled the message and they all got a bit confused. Everyone got very angry and got their feelings hurt. And then that escalated into lawsuits in both directions. So Matt is alleging that WP Engine are abusing the WordPress trademark by selling WordPress hosting and calling themselves WP Engine. They're confusing people into thinking they are WordPress. All of this ignores the fact that Matt sells WordPress hosting on WordPress.com, which probably doesn't make as money as WP Engine. So there's some interesting mixed motives and challenges there. And then it's just degraded from there. So it went from there into a whole bunch of name calling and a whole bunch of accusations, and Matt crossing some interesting lines. So the first one of which was, in order to log into WordPress.org, which you need to do if you want to ask a question on the support forum, or if you work for a company that has a plugin or sells themes to answer support questions, or to upload new code, or to do other bits and pieces, or to contribute, you now have to tick a checkbox saying you're not affiliated with the WP Engine, where the word affiliated is intentionally vague and Matt won't clarify it. So you have to make a decision for yourself whether you want to risk being legally identified as. So that was super messy. That was the point at which I got kicked out of the WordPress.org Slack for saying that maybe that wasn't particularly precise. So a whole bunch of long-term contributors, people who've shipped large amounts of code to core WordPress and various plugins and stuff, have just been banned. So there's now, I'm out, so I can't log in, I can't do stuff.
But wait, can you explain to people who don't know how you're related to all of this? Like, you were a major contributor for a long time, right?
Well, philosophically, I've done bits of code in WordPress core and I've puppeteered stuff. I was involved in the formation of the performance team. I scoped the original fonts API, which is part of the thing now, and a whole bunch of odds and ends. I've tinkered on WordPress.org, the website ecosystem, to do SEO stuff there. I ran the analytics stuff for a bit there, which I no longer have access to. And Matt, appears to have had a temper tantrum and banned anybody who disagrees with him and dissents, and kicked them out entirely of being able to log into WordPress.org, being able to log into the WordPress.org Slack where all of the conversations happen. I've had my analytics access revoked. And now if I want to attend a WordCamp event, which are the big kind of flagship conferences, I have to check the checkbox saying I do not work for WP Engine. I have to log into WordPress.org to do that. So I can't buy tickets to WordCamp events now. And I'm meant to be speaking at one in November. So that's interesting. But I'm not alone here. There are people. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you're also a massive advocate of WordPress.
Yeah.
I mean,
and still will be.
The amount of times that, there's been a discussion and we've run through about 3 or 4 different CMSs and you've just got the answer, WordPress, and that's it, basically. You're the guy that kind of goes, I'm sitting there kind of going, there's 12 different products that will potentially, and you're like, nope, there's just one. And so, for you to then basically turn around and kind of find that the leader of the community, the leader of the cult that you're in, is kind of turned around and said you're out because you don't kind of buy the Kool-Aid correctly is kind of a bit insane. It's kind of from our sort of external point of view, we're sitting here kind of going, this is going to be the next Netflix drama. This is great.
I think so. And I think of all of Matt's weird, distorted visions of reality, I think the most significant is an assumption that there's an infinite pool of willing contributors. Because historically, when he's offended or annoyed or confused people, or they've got burnt out, which they do in droves, they trundle off, and other people come in and step up and take the mantle. I did that. I came in relatively recently in the grand history of WordPress and went, you know what, I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff here. I see some gaps and opportunities, motivation, energy, now declining, yada, yada, yada. It's a pattern that lots of people go through, except the quantities of people in that space are diminishing and diminishing. Like the weekly accessibility chat and project has now been put on hold because there's no one to run it. So WordPress now has no accessibility function. And Matt's view is, we'll get some new people in, but I'm not sure there are any new people. And all of this continues to escalate, right? So now, more recently, one of WP Engine's biggest plugins and biggest ways they interface with their audience is a plugin called ACF, which they purchased from an independent person a while ago. Everybody uses ACF. It's kind of, if you want to do anything architectural with WordPress to customize how it works and behaves, ACF is the architecture you use. They claimed, well, there's a whole weird sequence of events. Matt said, we've spotted a security issue in ACF. Everybody should panic. Oh, look how untrustworthy WP Engine is. Weird. And then they quote unquote forked ACF, rolled their own version of it, except they didn't fork it. They took it over from the WordPress repository and renamed it, and kept all of the reviews and all of the author information, all the stuff. So they just stole it. And there's some interesting questions as to whether or not Matt can do that legally under the GPL licensing, but it's his website and it's his, sorry, go.
No, it seems like legally it was in the contract. Legally it was in the terms and conditions kind of thing.
Ish.
Just because it's a bit like, you know, when you sign up for Disney Plus, you can't sue Disney if they kill you in a theme park. It's one of those, by extension, ethically, morally weird, and we're all sitting there kind of going, but that's a step kind of going really in the wrong direction. It's a very interesting thing that they did. Which
you still recommend WordPress? Like, you haven't backed out? Is there a risk to regular users that their stuff will get stolen, or like what's the risk if you're not a contributor?
Yeah, I don't think there's a bigger or newer risk than there's always been. So historically, there have been cases, not uncommonly, that a plugin will, the author of a plugin will decide that they don't want to work on it anymore. And somebody else will buy it or merge it or take over responsibility, much the same as the kind of Chrome extension market, with the same kind of risks. And forever and a day, if you're running plugins, your site has been beholden to that kind of risk. But the difference here is the publicity and the scale of it. That this on the surface looks like a hostile, it looks like a supply chain attack. And I think the impact is the enterprise tier, right? So yeah, WordPress is still the best kit to use, but if I'm an enterprise CTO and I'm evaluating which platform, I'm sure as hell not going to pick the one where I overtly can't trust all of the middleware and add-ons and extension I'm using to maintain their code integrity. That's nuclear.
I think the other side of it is the fact that it isn't an ignored. It's a well-maintained. It's a commercial one that has got a. It's like, you know, it's not the same as, I mean, we've all seen it where plugins have kind of died and been, you know, not maintained. The latest version isn't compatible, and that's almost one of the problems with WordPress is the fact that what you've built it on needs to be maintained. And so, you know, you can kind of understand why if something that is critically being used across millions of websites isn't maintained and has actual security implications, and there isn't a commercial side of it, it doesn't have a lot of support, then, you know, rolling it up and kind of going, yep, actually we'll make sure it's maintained, that makes total sense. This one is just it's a schoolboy kind of getting upset with somebody and kind of stealing their lunch.
It's a weird combination of petty and hostile, and it's hugely harmful. Daniel, muted. Unless you're just mouthing, maybe.
Yeah, that's my new hobby. Just randomly, I sneezed.
Just looks like you're talking.
Yeah, I sneezed about 5 minutes ago, and I don't think I even muted myself. Yeah, from the outside looking in, obviously we just get the no context screenshots of stuff happening on Twitter, but it has it always, like, the one which springs to mind is, I think there's a screenshot of Slack where Matt kind of asked, like, oh, shall we fork ACF? And 60 plus people clicked on the clown emoji as a reaction, and then someone screenshotted that everyone who clicked on clown seems to have been deactivated.
Yep.
Is that out of context, or is that literally what?
No, that's literally that's where we're at, and that's one of 100 examples of that kind of level of toxicity that's going on, because it's Matt's playground. Matt owns WordPress.org. The Slack instance is his. He can decide what he wants to do with it. He was also deleting questions and dissenting opinions from the conversation. So the screenshots you're seeing are the polished ones after the fact. So the original ones had a whole bunch of me in there as well, saying this doesn't make sense. Can we get clarity on this? What's going on here? Actually, not trolling, surprisingly. Actually, like asking quite pointed questions about what is the legal definition of this. Like the checkbox you've got to check says I'm not affiliated with WP Engine, but WP Engine is a hosting company's website. It's not the legal entity, which is WP Engine LLC. And they're the child company of Silver Lake, which is the company that there's an actual legal beef with. So actually getting clarity on what am I checking and what does this mean is really critical. But yeah, that gets you banned. And yeah, there's all sorts of other mess and nonsense like that. Like the, so obviously with the secure custom fields, which they renamed ACF to, obviously loads of people are leaving 1-star reviews on it saying, I don't trust the company behind this. This is a great product and a plugin, but the governance is wrong, etc. And they're deleting those reviews, which I think is particularly interesting given the UK and the EU recently passed a whole bunch of new legislation around review manipulation, but they're US and it's Matt's website and the policies, terms and conditions say we do what we want. So yeah, it's a really, cult is the word. It's really weird.
The thing that I found quite amusing is the WordPress.com Twitter account, or X as we're supposed to call it now. And suddenly it's gone quite, you can clearly see that the person that's logging in and making all the commentary and everything. And then you get the community notes kind of going, actually, this isn't what really happened. And the community notes are hilarious at the moment. And, you know, I mean, the funny part about it is apparently loads of people being blocked by WordPress.com, which is ironic considering the fact that Twitter or X has actually just come out and said, by the way, if you block people, they can still see everything. They just can't interact with you. So it's kind of a fun turnaround at the moment. It is insane from a pure kind of outside point of view that nobody is turning around and saying, this is literally going to kill, or not kill, but from our point of view as like, you know, if I run a development company or an agency or a big business, there is no way right now that I would sign off having WordPress as the CMS right now.
Completely understandable.
I have a question about Twitter. So I hadn't heard this because I've been traveling. So you can block people, but all it means is they can't interact with you. So they can't confront you directly. They're forced to subtweet you.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the short version is the fact that all the stalkers and creeps and weirdos out there that you've blocked. I'm not saying that you've got a lot of these, Cindy. Yeah. So you can't. So if you've basically blocked somebody or you've tried to block somebody, then suddenly they can actually see. I mean, it's a bit of a strange situation, which makes a lot of people a bit like, you know, I mean, I've blocked people who I just don't want to see in my feed, or they comment inappropriate things, or they do stuff. And, you know, my block list is generally spammers and weirdos. And Jono.
Yep.
So just for your benefit, Cindy, I've just pasted most of the tweet in here. And this also has been a pop-up. It's also ironic that this pop-up came up a day after everyone's had the 7 days of 6 days left to subscribe to premium with 40% off. But effectively, they've said soon, so they'll be changing how it works. If your post is set to public, accounts you've blocked will be able to view them, but they'll not be able to engage. And then the bit which I've not been able to put on here because the word limit is in brackets like, reply, repost, etc. So, yeah, if they're going to continue to basically. Everyone who we've blocked over the years is going to cause more subtweeting, whatever. And
so people who want to talk about Matt can talk about Matt, and he can still see it and just subtweet them if they've blocked him.
Yeah. And vice versa. And
from what I've seen, Matt's the one blocking everybody from WordPress and his own account. But yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Breaking news. Matt has just posted on WordPress.org, the open source home of the software, not WordPress.com or Automattic, his platforms, that the hosting companies that just so happen to pay him money will buy you out of your WP Engine contract and give you discounted hosting instead. But this is the weirdness, like he's posting as him stuff on WordPress.org representing the brand, and it's all, like the core of the original argument was there were confusion around these brand entities and trademark integrity is important, and WP Engine are pretending to be WordPress and capitalizing on it. Yet all of the comms and messaging around this is like, is this Matt? Is it WordPress.org? Is it WordPress.com? Is it Automattic? Is it Audrey Capital, which is his? Is it the WordPress Foundation? It's all just Matt. There is only Matt. That is the cult. Subtweet that.
Wait, so Jono, do people need to do anything, or like only if they have an opinion then they can do things, or like just wait it out? What are you recommending?
It's always a good time to review your hosting, and part of that should be philosophical. I think WP Engine are one of many options, Bluehost, etc. It depends which. If you're philosophical care about this, pick a side. Otherwise, you might for a while disable auto updating on any plugins you run that are owned by WP Engine. There's a list on their website, just in case Matt/Automatic does go to war on any of the others. Then you can opt yourself out of that supply chain attack stuff. Otherwise, I think wait and see. Your site isn't at risk. Nothing's going to break. Nothing's going to change. It's about the future of the kind of open source ecosystem and the integrity of that, which is.
We just jinx it by saying nothing's going to break, nothing's going to change.
Well, some stuff has. Like there were some sites that had custom logic in that were specifically looking for the phrase ACF and stuff in their code, and when it changed to SCF, that broke. It's not common, but yeah, I would be. Sites shouldn't break unless you're doing really weird stuff at scale. Yeah, your site is fine. It's just that the broader ecosystem is under threat.
Really, where to go from there? Because it's one of these. It's a topic that we could probably talk about a lot, and there's a lot of things we've not touched on, which I don't think we should, because there's been a lot of personal stuff being thrown into it as well. It's not just been a strictly commercial.
It's got nasty, hasn't it? I mean,
yeah.
We sort of messaged about some bits and pieces. It was like, yeah, we're not going to speak about that, but there's some really nasty stuff going on. All I am going to say is I don't think this is kind of over yet, and it is.
No. This is the beginning.
This is the making of a great Netflix docudrama thing, and yeah, I hope that it doesn't break half the internet, because a lot of great content is built on great websites built on WordPress. So yeah. Sorry, Dan.
No, the other thing I was just interested in looking at, because I'm on, I've just gone to the Twitter account of WordPress.com, and I'm trying to, obviously, Wayback Machine's currently down right now, which isn't helping in the situation. But I do hope they get that resolved quickly as well, because that's a fantastic asset. And you basically, in my opinion, if you're trying to cyber attack the Internet Archive, you basically are the kind of person who likes kicking puppies and kittens, because it's not. They don't deserve it. But they've got in their X bio now, literally the statement, basically, the best managed WordPress hosting on the planet. And that's on WordPress.com's Twitter now. And I don't know I go on that Twitter frequently, but I don't think that's how it always has been.
No, there's been a lot of rewriting of the truth. Like everybody's terms and conditions and policies have been quietly edited over the last few days to reinforce the statements and stuff they've made. Everybody is gaslighting everybody now, and it's deeply unpleasant. Also, it's not the best hosting, right? It's probably better than an average WordPress host. Can't say WordPress host anymore because that's trademarked. Have to be hosting forward. Like it's all silly. It's all really, really silly, and it's all speculatively about the money, right? So Matt is an open source hippie in principle until there's cash involved, and it turns out that actually part of what his original fight was for is he wanted 8% of WP Engine's revenue net, gross, pre-tax, like, which is insane. Even as an opening position to negotiate from, that's never going to happen. So he's just driving them away. And just looking at the hosts that they recommend on that page now, it's themselves, a derivative of themselves, and a third party that's one of the ones who pays millions and millions of dollars a year to be on that page. So nothing is honest about any of this at all.
Well, thank you for sharing the thoughts around that, because I know we all know, well, everyone who knows you is you are very close to it, and WordPress is one of your three catchphrases, I guess, and alongside there's no such thing as a migration and Fiverr Dev.
Cloudflare.
And Cloudflare,
But yeah, so I appreciate you actually sharing insights in there, because like I say, you've been a massive contributor to that community. I'm not going to say we wouldn't name anymore in case like there's too many like watches and listens he's got on YouTube and stuff to get this up, but no, we appreciate it. So kind of to round things off on this kind of little episode, Ben, and something a little more cheery, which I know in the pre-recording, let's call it, John, you booed at when I said this. Google Shopping and Google's further land grab on commerce, I guess. Jerry, do you want to kick things off on this one?
I don't really know a huge amount about this. I was reading through this, and it seems like they've kind of figured out that the discovery experience of buying is going to evolve. And like I play around with ChatGPT and Gemini and everything else perpetually. Last night I was having a strange conversation with Gemini, and it got weird. But basically, when somebody comes along and says, you know, what would be a nice blue dress for the wedding I'm going to, it's going to be so much smarter than previously when you started kind of going, I need a maxi dress with da-da-da-da, you know, all of those kind of things. It's going to be super smart. I kind of feeling that this is something which they've kind of figured out that Amazon with, what's Amazon's new bot thing called?
Rufus.
Okay. That sounds like somebody I would take dress advice from. Rufus has kind of come in, and now suddenly Google's kind of gone, actually, we really are going to be losing ground against this. It'll be interesting to see how it evolves and when it comes in properly and what it really looks like. Personally, I like the idea as long as it's integrated into smart devices and phones and AR glasses and everything in a way that means that I'll be able to do it hands-free, smartly, intelligently, and I can actually buy and find and choose the headphones or the big long blue dress that I want easily. Jerry,
when are you going to wear this blue dress?
Like I say, whenever you invite me to a wedding.
I'm happy that my wedding has been and gone, and now you discover dresses. That is giving me some solace. Although I am happy you're choosing a maxi as opposed to a mini or a midi.
Dan,
good point.
You do know I've got photos of the stag night.
I looked amazing. So please do not share those still, but I'm not ashamed. I'm more ashamed of the fact that you all took me for a spray tan, and I smelt like digestive biscuits for about 2 weeks afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah, me with a spray tan was yeah.
Should we get back on topic, because we're losing everybody.
Back on topic. So I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Jerry, and say that I don't think this was all of a sudden. I think this has been the plan for many, many years. I think that this is an evolution of all of the data that Google's been capturing as they spy on us through Chrome. And understand our cohorts, our shopping behavior, and our preferences, and the questions we ask when we're in a shopping funnel, right? And so they started launching Product Knowledge Graph, like 3 or 4 years ago at this point. And Product Knowledge Graph gives them a spot in the topic layer to start associating questions with a specific topic and a topic category. Or a topic grouping. And so they've been able to learn, what do people care about when they're shopping for a blue dress, and how do they get to a final decision? You know, is it all price based? Is it length based? Is it, you know, what else is it? Is it fabric? Who knows what? So they've been building this since, you know, they've been undercut by Amazon greatly, and they've been trying to figure out how to beat Amazon for years. And what they have that Amazon doesn't, although Amazon has a lot of data, Google has more. So I think this has been the plan for a long time. Now that they got forced to rush Gemini out, or SGE then Gemini. And so now they're like, well, why not? You know, let's get some money back here. Yeah, I think if you're a privacy person, this should be concerning, because they're not just capturing what you've done before, they're capturing everything you've clicked on and filtered before. So if that bothers you, that they're going to have an archive of what you're evaluating at, you know, when you're making a purchase decision, and like you don't want Google to think you're cheap by sorting by price or whatever, then this should bother you. But if you're just a normal consumer, I think they're going to be very happy.
I kind of agree with Cindy the fact that this has probably been happening for a number of times. I think it was mid last year, one of the e-commerce clients I work in the US, Google started to test the filters and shop by brand and different elements. And even the fact that it was about a month to 6 weeks ago, they started putting the Merchant Center parameter URLs onto normal organic listings. That kind of now feels like it was a soft test in blending Merchant Center with organic even further. And oops, this was an error. No, it wasn't. It was like the soft launch. And not as subtle as they probably thought it was.
Well, and absolutely. And Google, you have to remember, Google will take money first, but if they can't get your money, they're happy to get your data, and that's worth money to them. And so that's where this compromise comes in. Like, we've seen something like this coming since the beginning of Product Knowledge Graph, and then since this the switch with Merchant Center, where now you can have free Merchant Center listings instead of just paid, because when Google is the middle layer, they know everything about your purchase history. They can interject and say, pay with, Google Pay. Like, they get more and more of the data in there. And like, who knows what information Google's getting out of Google Pay once you give them a credit card file. Like, there's a lot in there, and Google's happy to take it. And remember, even if you change your mind, they have a lot of historical data. Once you say yes, you can't unsay yes.
Well, there's another angle.
Sorry, go on, John.
There's another angle to this as well, which is, for the last 3 years or so, the entirety of schema.org has essentially been subverted by the Google Merchant Center team. So, partly because a whole bunch of other people left and aren't pushing forwards, but all of the new features and upgrades and new capabilities are as a result of Merchant Center team employees pushing for, we want better understandings over return policies, or formalization of color codes, or the better ability to understand the URL of your checkout page, etc. As part of, to power the next stage of this play, which is the thing that Amazon truly doesn't have, is the scale of inventory from the whole open web. And Google are already crawling that and indexing it. And if they can also, as part of that same process, reliably update your stock levels and pricing, and understand whether your product's on offer and that it's a sibling of a different one that's available in a different size that only delivers on Tuesdays, they have all the overhead to do that and catalog it. And then this powers the transformation of the SERP into a better version of Amazon based on the open web rather than based on a proprietary catalog. This is the end game. It's always been the end game.
Yeah, I actually had a really good conversation with Jarno Mandriel on the Tech SEO podcast over on the Salt channel, just to plug that one about this, and he kind of highlighted that there's been no one from Bing, no one from Yahoo kicking about the schema community in a long time, and it is being heavily influenced by a certain pay type. And I think the other point of what Google can do with this data, kind of going off what you said, Cindy, if they understand, if they've got all the data now for that user journey, the user buy funnel, they can feed that back in. And if you've got all dynamic pricing turned on your ads, they can actually start to justify price increases and get more money out of paid. So go, oh, we have more certainty you're going to be here. So all this kind of points more towards revenue on the paid side, and for that better experience to almost combat Rufus and Amazon and even Meta with. So I imagine Meta, when they fully launched out, they'll have some form of AI integration with Facebook Marketplace and Instagram and Facebook shopping.
Yeah, I totally disagree. I think there's already a case being pressed in the U.S. about Google trying to separate advertisers and other ad networks, right? To try and undercut the other ad networks, make them unprofitable. And then once they've put these other ad networks out of business, then they, increase their prices, right? So they can be a loss leader for a while and have lower prices until their competitor goes out of business, and then they increase the prices. Like, that's kind of the plan, I think, although they would, of course, never admit to that. It's just a happy accident when it happens, according to them. But the other thing to think about here is that, like, I especially think in the American context, where Amazon is huge and Amazon Prime's been a thing for many years, and people became really dependent on it during COVID especially. But in places where Amazon doesn't have as big a footprint or doesn't have any footprint, there may be a less obvious kind of leader in the online shopping space. And so we have to think about the rest of the world as well. Like, Google could really dominate in some countries where they're not competing with someone huge like Amazon. And that'll be interesting.
Yeah, very.
I was at a conference, Search and Stuff in Antalya. Best conference ever, obviously better than PubCon. And one of the things that I was speaking about with Simon, who John knows quite well, was basically that apparently Google has been actually trying adding products to Basket. as a way to check stock and do some really strange other stuff. So people's data is being kind of corrupted by Google kind of adding, and I'm kind of going, that sounds crazy. That's a weird thing for Google to be doing, but that's been confirmed.
The Merchant Center team, they're an entity unto themselves. They don't play nicely with the organic team until they start subsuming the landscape. Different people, they don't. Also, their calling's not massively sophisticated, different architecture, different infrastructure, different thinking. Yeah, they're crazy.
Cool.
But looking for an add to cart button just to check it, like that's another level that I think most your everyday SEO isn't thinking that Google is thinking that far in advance or doing that much, but they absolutely are. Like it's a company of many smart people trying to figure out as much as they can in any kind of, to me that sounds sneaky, but maybe it's just because we're not used to it. Maybe it's like table stakes now. Like you have to have an add to cart feature that shows your product in stock and at that same price, so that it's not a bait and switch. But that's actually quite complicated for some kinds of goods where the pricing is different by state or whatever. It means you have to have lots of different Merchant Center feeds, or rely on an online price. But then if it's not a product that can be shipped, it has to be delivered, then it's different. The pricing especially can be very hard for online, offline retailers.
I did notice that John Lewis, for instance, for a long time had every single product out of stock and every single product at zero money. But all the pricing in Google search results was being fed in from the Merchant Center feed. So, we've been able to see the fact that the organic results have been supplemented by invisible sources. Well, that sounds dodgy, but by kind of like, we can see that Google has been using the feeds for a lot longer than I think we kind of realized.
Something you guys might not realize, and maybe this has changed recently, but I know for years Merchant Center had different rules about how you can and can't use canonical tags, and you could have Merchant Center specific landing pages that were materially different from your regular organic landing pages, and you could canonical one way or the other. And I'm not sure if that's changed with the Merchant Center Next. I need to read up on that, but some things have changed with Merchant Center Next. But mostly it seemed like it was a push for adding AI to your product setup process to get product sellers more kind of reliant on Google's AI product setup process to market their stuff. So I don't think a lot of rules changed. But realizing it's different is important.
They changed it when they rolled out the relatively recent updates to product variant schema, because the old guidelines required you to canonicalize the variants back to the default state, which made sense for Merchant Center completely. But given that they want to be harvesting this stuff as part of their organic crawl processes, different logic and different requirements, you now have to self-canonicalize all your variants, which technically they should have been anyway. But now the scale of the corpus is huge. That raises some really interesting other challenges. If you've got a t-shirt in 5 colors and 5 sizes and 3 different fits, suddenly your URL space explodes. And they're not going to be crawling that at the same cadence as your inventory is being updated. So you've still got this push-pull XML integration. You've still got a Merchant Center feed. You've still got them reading schema on the page and trying to add stuff to the cart. None of these systems reconcile. It's going to be really messy.
We're literally going through a project at the moment where someone has got that, where they've got these parameters for variations, and there's like one product can have 20 to 25 different URLs off the back of it. And the kind of best practice looking from the SEO head doesn't align with what the Merchant Center thing is. It's like a, do we cut the nose to spite the face kind of thing? Is it it's you can tell the lack of the internal communication there is non-existent, which we already kind of know, but the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, the requirement that you have like a default version as well. There are quite a lot of products with variants where there isn't a sensible default, like you have to pick one. Yet none of it makes sense. And I've definitely seen evidence that those teams aren't talking to each other, and they haven't solved that underlying challenge of, if you want to piggyback crawling and indexing to power this ecosystem, you have to be able to do that reliably at a fast enough scale across all these variants to be able to have it be accurate. And they don't have a solution to that. And I don't see an easy way that, what is my camera doing? See an easy way that they can re-architect.
Let
me turn that down. That was horrendous.
Yeah, apologies to all the viewers watching this who have been just like moving sideways. It's not you, it is 100% Jono and now Jerry.
That's better. There we go.
Yeah.
It's like being in Vegas again.
Gonna step outside and realise it's 4 a.m. the next day in time for breakfast. Which I kind of guess brings us full circle back to kind of breakfast. So we appreciate that Jerry has selfishly made plans away from the computer and has to leave, which is why he's wearing a shirt. Not that he wouldn't be wearing a shirt if he's completely topless. We would not subject people to a topless Jerry. He's wearing
a collared shirt.
Can I just make an observation that every single podcast I've had a different fun shirt on? This is just more of a going out shirt.
You're proud because you have more than 3 shirts.
5. This is episode 5. Yeah.
Jerry owns what we've learned is that Jerry owns at least 5 shirts.
Or Jerry knows how to do laundry.
On that note, I'm going.
Yeah.
I have a date.
Are you buying shirts specifically for this?
I have shirts.
So you're telling me you owned that shirt by natural occurrence and not to be. Thank you very much for watching today's episode. If you like today's content and like Jerry's shirt, please do drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We will be recording again in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, and hopefully the WordPress and soon to be renamed WordPress Engine supposedly debacle shenanigans will calm down, or we'll have something else to talk about. So I'd like to thank Jerry, Cindy, and Jono for making time in their evenings and mornings for joining us. If you'd like to come on this podcast for when Jono is unavailable, like we've had Garrett and oh Christ, I forgot his name. Alfie. Oh, I feel so awful. All I remember is the coffee shop Wi-Fi. Sorry, Alfie. If you'd like to come on, please let us know your comment in the comment section. Reach out to us on Slack or Twitter. All opinions are welcome, and all shirt vibrancies are welcome as well.
I would prefer it if Dan wore slightly less of his pajama t-shirt kind of look.
This is a normal t-shirt. I'm sorry that I don't have the vibrance. I have the flashy lights instead. But on that note, thank you very much for watching, and yeah, cheers. Bye now.